The first time I saw her, she was crying in the rain outside a convenience store at 2 in the morning, and I almost kept walking. Almost. That's the thing about being human, we're all just one decision away from changing someone's life, or missing the chance entirely. I'd like to tell you I stopped because I'm a good person, but the truth is, I stopped because she reminded me of my sister. Same dark hair plastered to her face, same way of holding herself like she was trying to take up less space in the world. I would come to learn that this moment, this choice to pause, would unravel everything I thought I knew about kindness, about sacrifice, and about the invisible threads that connect us all. Her name was Maria, though I wouldn't learn that for another 3 days. That night, she just looked up at me with eyes that had seen too much, clutching a soaked cardboard sign that read "Please help." Anything. Her hands were shaking, and not from the cold November rain, but from something deeper, something that lived in her bones. I bought her coffee and a sandwich, sat with her under the store's flickering awning, and listened. She didn't tell me everything that night, people never do, but she told me enough. She'd been a nurse in Guatemala, had a daughter named Sophia, 8 years old, who loved butterflies and wanted to be a teacher. Maria had made the journey north alone, working herself to exhaustion at 3 jobs, sleeping in shelters and sometimes in her car, all to send money home and save enough to bring Sophia here legally. The right way, she kept saying, as if she needed to justify her dream to a stranger. For 2 years, she'd been invisibly one of millions of people we pass every day without seeing, working the jobs that keep our world running while remaining utterly unseen. I gave her $40 that night, all the cash I had in my wallet. She cried again, thanked me in broken English and fluid Spanish, and I walked back to my apartment feeling like maybe I'd done something that mattered. I thought that would be the end of it. One good deed in a lifetime of mostly looking the other way. But when I passed that same store 3 days later, there she was again, in the same spot, with the same sign, and I realized that my $40 had been a drop in an ocean of need. This time, I asked more questions. I learned that she was 42 but looked 60. That she had a degree in nursing that meant nothing here without expensive certifications and perfect English. That she cleaned offices from midnight to 6 a.m., worked at a laundromat from 7 to 3, and spent evenings doing whatever cash jobs she could find. That she'd been mugged twice, slept in her car when she couldn't afford the shelter fee, and hadn't spoken to her daughter in person for 784 days. She knew the exact number. I'm a teacher, barely making enough to cover my own rent in our expensive city. I'm not wealthy. I'm not particularly special. But I couldn't stop thinking about Maria, about Sophia, about the invisible architecture of suffering that exists just beneath the surface of our comfortable lives. So I did something small. I created a GoFundMe page. I titled it "Help Maria Bring Her Daughter Home," and I told her story. I really told it, with all the details that make a person real rather than just a statistic. I shared it on Facebook, sent it to my students' parents, posted it in community groups. I expected maybe a few $100s, enough to make a small dent. What happened instead changed everything. The first donation came within minutes. $50 from a former student, then another, and another. Within 24 hours, strangers from across the country were contributing. A retired nurse in Oregon sent $200 with a note, "I see you, sister." A man in Texas who'd immigrated from Mexico 40 years ago sent $500. Teachers, truck drivers, single mothers, college students eating ramen are people who didn't have much themselves but understood what it meant to dream of something better. The comments section became a tapestry of human connection. People shared their own stories of immigration, of separation, of the family members they'd left behind or the strangers who'd helped them when they needed it most. A woman wrote about how her grandmother had made a similar journey in the 1950s, how she'd worked as a maid for 20 years to bring her children north one by one. A man described being helped by a gas station attendant when his car broke down with his sick child inside, how that stranger's kindness had restored his faith in humanity. But not everyone was kind. The trolls came too, with their poison and their politics, their cruel certainty that some people deserve help and others don't. They said Maria should go home, that she was breaking the law, that charity starts at home. They said I was naive, that this was a scam, that I was enabling illegal immigration. Their words were sharp, designed to wound, to make me doubt. For a moment, they succeeded. Then something unexpected happened. The people who donated started responding to the trolls, defending Maria, defending kindness itself. A veteran wrote, "I fought for this country so that people like Maria could have a chance at the American dream. That's what we're supposed to be about." A conservative business owner from Alabama contributed and commented, "I don't care about politics. I care about a mother who wants to be with her child." That's universal. The community that had formed around this story refused to let cynicism win. Within 2 weeks, we'd raised $38,000. Enough for immigration lawyers, for the fees and the paperwork, for plane tickets, for a security deposit on an apartment. Enough for Maria to stop sleeping in her car. Enough to bring Sophia home. I'll never forget the day Maria told me the news her petition had been approved, her daughter could come. She collapsed in my arms, sobbing, and I sobbed with her. 2 women who'd been strangers a month earlier, now bound by this unlikely miracle. She kept saying thank you over and over, but I kept thinking about all those donors, those thousands of people who'd chosen to see her, to care, to help. I was just the person who'd told the story. They were the ones who'd written the ending. The day Sophia arrived at the airport, I was there. So were dozens of other people who'd donated, people who'd followed the story, people who just wanted to witness this reunion. We stood behind the barriers with signs and flowers, waiting. When Sophia came through those doors, small and scared and clutching a worn stuffed butterfly, and saw her mother for the first time in 2 years, the sound Maria made wasn't quite crying and wasn't quite laughter. It was something more primal, more true. It was the sound of a soul becoming whole again. They ran to each other, collided in an embrace that seemed to stop time. Sophia wrapped her legs around her mother's waist like she'd never let go again, and Maria buried her face in her daughter's hair, breathing her in. Around me, strangers were crying, holding each other, connected by this moment of pure love. A businessman in a suit stood next to a woman in a hijab, next to a teenage boy with purple hair, all of us witnesses to the same truth, that kindness is contagious, that compassion has no borders, that we are all capable of being someone else's miracle. In the months that followed, I watched Maria transform. With stable housing and legal documentation, she was able to get certified as a nurse's aide. Sophia enrolled in school, made friends, learned English with the fearless adaptability of children. Maria sent thank you notes to every single donor, over 3,000 of them, handwritten in careful English. Many wrote back. Some became friends. One couple even hired Maria to care for their elderly mother, at a wage that honored her skills and her humanity. But the story didn't end with Maria and Sophia. Something had shifted in me, and in many of the people who'd been part of this journey. I started seeing the invisible people everywhere: the janitors, the delivery drivers, the people holding signs on corners. I started asking their names, hearing their stories, sharing them. Other teachers at my school started their own fundraisers for people in need. Students organized coat drives and food collections. The kindness rippled outward in ways I never could have predicted. A year later, Maria surprised me by showing up at my classroom with Sophia. They brought me a gift to a framed photograph of them at the airport on that first day, surrounded by all of us strangers who'd become family. On the back, Maria had written in her careful script, "You saw me when I was invisible. You reminded me that I matter. Now I will spend my life doing the same for others." That's when I understood that the real story was never about me or my fundraiser. It was about what happens when we choose to see each other, really see each other, across all the divides we create. It was about the extraordinary power of ordinary people choosing kindness over convenience, connection over indifference, love over fear. Maria was right, as she does spend her life helping others now. She volunteers at immigrant advocacy organizations, helps newcomers navigate the system that once bewildered her, translates at hospitals and schools. Sophia, now 10, volunteers beside her, growing up understanding that her life was made possible by the generosity of strangers, and that she has a responsibility to pay that forward. As for me, I learned that heroism isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just stopping in the rain to ask someone if they're okay. Sometimes it's sharing a story, or giving what little you have, or simply refusing to look away from someone else's pain. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, those small acts of courage inspire others to do the same, creating a cascade of kindness that changes lives in ways we never imagined possible. Her name is Maria, and she is no longer invisible. None of us are, if we choose to truly see each other. That's the power of humanity, and not that we're never broken, never desperate, never in need, but that we're capable of lifting each other up when we fall. We are all just one choice, one moment of compassion away from being someone's miracle. All we have to do is stop, look, and let ourselves care. The question isn't whether we can change the world. The question is whether we are brave enough to try, one person, one story, one small act of kindness at a time. I think we are. I know we are. I've seen it.